The mining station Kepler 442b hung in the void like a metallic spider, its massive drilling arms extending deep into the asteroid's core. Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his brow as he finished calibrating the extraction equipment, the hum of machinery creating a steady rhythm that had become as familiar as his own heartbeat over the past 6 months. Another 16-hour shift in paradise, he muttered to himself, checking the readouts on his handheld scanner. The rare earth metals they were extracting would fetch a fortune back on Earth, but out here in the frontier systems, it felt like they were mining dreams from stone. Marcus had volunteered for this assignment not for the money, though the hazard pay was substantial, but for the solitude. After losing his squad in the Proxima incident 3 years ago, he'd found that the vast emptiness of space somehow made the emptiness inside him more bearable. The other miners kept their distance, sensing something in his quiet demeanor that suggested a man who had seen too much. The communication array crackled to life, interrupting his thoughts. "Shun, report to the observation deck immediately," came the voice of Station Commander Rodriguez. There was something in her tone that made Marcus straighten. In his experience, urgency in a superior's voice rarely meant good news. He made his way through the station's narrow corridors, past the humming life support systems and the sealed bulkheads that separated them from the hostile vacuum outside. The observation deck was the station's crown jewel, a transparent aluminum dome that provided a breathtaking view of the surrounding asteroid field and the distant stars beyond. "Commander." Rodriguez stood before the main display, her usually composed face etched with concern. Beside her, Chief Engineer Patel was frantically working at a console, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces with practiced efficiency. "Commander," Marcus said, snapping to attention despite himself. Old habits from his military days died hard. "At ease, Chun. We've got a situation." She gestured toward the main display, where a three-dimensional star map showed their sector of space. Red icons were moving across the map with alarming speed, converging on their position like predators closing in on prey. "What are we looking at?" Marcus asked, though something cold was already forming in the pit of his stomach. "Dominion fleet," Rodriguez replied grimly. 17 ships, including 3 dreadnoughts. They'll be in weapons range in approximately 4 hours. The Galactic Dominion? Marcus had heard the stories, whispered in the dark corners of frontier bars and transmitted through encrypted channels across the outer rim. A militant alliance of alien species that viewed humanity's rapid expansion into the galaxy as a threat to be eliminated. They had been conducting raids on human settlements for the past 2 years, each attack more brutal than the last. "Why would they come here?" Patel asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "We're just a mining operation. There's nothing of strategic value on this rock." Rodriguez turned to face them both, her expression grave. "Because it's not about the asteroid, gentlemen. It's about sending a message. Every human settlement they destroy, every outpost they reduce to debris, it's all part of their campaign to drive us back to Earth. They want to prove that humanity has no business among the stars." Marcus studied the tactical display, his military training automatically analyzing the approaching formation. The Dominion ships moved with the precision of a well-coordinated fleet, their formation designed to maximize firepower while minimizing their exposure to return fire. It was the kind of tactical brilliance that had made them the dominant force in 3-star systems. "What's our defensive capability?" he asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "We have 2 security shuttles armed with mining lasers and whatever personal weapons are in the armory," Rodriguez replied. "Against 17 warships, we might as well throw rocks." "Evacuation?" Patel suggested hopefully. "The evacuation pods can carry 12 people each, and we have 4 pods. That's 48 people out of a crew of 237. Rodriguez shook her head. "The math doesn't work." Marcus felt the familiar weight of command settling on his shoulders, even though he held no official rank on the station. It was the same feeling he'd experienced on Proxima when the enemy had them surrounded and the odds were impossible. The same feeling that had cost him his squad but had also taught him that sometimes impossible odds were just another way of saying that conventional thinking wouldn't work. "Commander." I need access to the station schematics and a complete inventory of our resources, he said, his voice taking on a tone of authority that made both Rodriguez and Patel look at him with new attention. Chun, what are you thinking? Rodriguez asked. I'm thinking that the Dominion has made one crucial mistake, Marcus replied, his eyes never leaving the tactical display. They're treating us like helpless miners instead of what we really are, which is? Marcus turned to face her, and for the first time in months, Rodriguez saw something in his eyes that reminded her why this quiet maintenance worker had once been considered one of the finest tactical officers in the Earth Defense Force. Humans, he said simply. And humans don't die quietly. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity as Marcus transformed the mining station from a simple extraction facility into something far more dangerous. The mining lasers, originally designed to cut through solid rock, were recalibrated and repositioned to serve as defensive weapons. The station's artificial gravity generators were modified to create localized gravitational anomalies that could disrupt incoming missiles. Even the waste processing systems were repurposed, their powerful magnetic fields turned into crude but effective electromagnetic pulse generators. The other miners watched in amazement as Marcus orchestrated these preparations with the calm efficiency of a master tactician. Orders were given with quiet authority, and somehow, despite the overwhelming odds they faced, morale began to improve. There was something infectious about Marcus's confidence, something that made even the most frightened crew member believe that maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the station's chief medical officer, approached Marcus as he supervised the installation of improvised armor plating around the command center. You know this is suicide, don't you? She said bluntly. Even if your modifications work perfectly, we're still talking about 17 warships against a mining station. Marcus paused in his work, considering her words carefully. Doctor, 3 years ago on Proxima, I watched 17 of the finest soldiers I've ever known die fighting impossible odds. You know what I learned that day? What? That sometimes the impossible is just another word for something nobody's tried before. Dr. Mitchell studied his face for a moment, seeing the pain that still lingered from whatever had happened on Proxima, but also seeing the determination that had kept him fighting when others might have given up. What do you need from medical? She asked finally. Combat stims for the weapon crews and emergency surgical supplies staged throughout the station, Marcus replied without hesitation. And doctor? Make sure you're ready to treat wounds you've never seen before. Dominion weapons don't kill cleanly. As the final hour approached, Marcus stood once again in the observation deck, watching the approaching fleet grow larger on the display. The modifications were complete, the crew was as ready as they could be, and all that remained was to see if human ingenuity could triumph over overwhelming firepower. Commander Rodriguez joined him at the viewport, her hands clasped behind her back in a pose of military bearing that betrayed her own combat experience. Any regrets? She asked quietly. Marcus considered the question seriously. He thought about the quiet life he'd built for himself on the station, the peace he'd found in the simple routine of maintenance work. He thought about the 17 crew members who would die today if his plan failed, and the hundreds more who would follow if the Dominion's campaign of terror continued unchecked. Just one, he said finally. Then it took me 3 years to remember who I used to be. The communication array crackled to life, and an alien voice filled the command center, speaking accented but perfectly understandable English. Human mining facility. This is War Commander Thecalon of the Dominion Fleet, Crimson Talon. You will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your facility and the execution of all personnel. Marcus stepped forward and activated the response channel, his voice calm and steady despite the magnitude of the moment. War Commander Thecalon, this is Kepler Mining Station 442B. We respectfully decline your generous offer. There was a pause, as if the alien commander couldn't quite believe what he had heard. Human, you appear to misunderstand your situation. We are 17 ships of the line. You are a single mining platform with no military escort. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift. Marcus smiled grimly as he prepared to deliver a message that would echo across the galaxy in the hours to come. Commander Thekalon, I think you're the one who misunderstands the situation. You see, you've made one critical error in your calculations. And what might that be, human? You assumed we were miners, Marcus replied, his voice carrying across every speaker in the station, reaching every crew member who had chosen to stand and fight rather than flee. We're not miners. We're... The first salvo from the Dominion fleet lit up the void like deadly fireworks, plasma bolts and energy beams streaking across the darkness toward the mining station. Marcus watched through the reinforced viewport as the weapons approached, his enhanced tactical display showing their trajectories with mathematical precision. Gravitational deflection in 3.2. Now. He called out. Chief Engineer Patel's modifications to the gravity generators activated, creating localized distortions in spacetime that bent the incoming fire away from critical systems. Most of the Dominion weapons missed entirely, their targeting computers confused by the unexpected gravitational anomalies. The few that found their mark struck. Reinforced sections where the crew had installed improvised armor plating. Direct. Hit on sections 7 and 12, reported Lieutenant Torres from the damage control station. Hull breaches sealed automatically. Casualties minimal? War Commander Thekalon's voice crackled over the communication system, his previous confidence replaced by obvious irritation. Impossible. Our targeting systems are reading massive gravitational distortions around your facility. What kind of defense grid are you operating? Marcus keyed the response channel, allowing himself a small smile. The kind you didn't plan for, Commander. Perhaps you should reconsider your approach. Instead of responding, the Dominion fleet adjusted its formation, spreading out to attack from multiple vectors simultaneously. It was exactly what Marcus had hoped they would do. The alien commander was thinking like a military officer, applying conventional tactics against what he assumed was a conventional defensive system. Phase 2, Marcus announced to the crew. Mining laser crews prepare for coordinated firing sequence. Throughout the station, teams of miners who had spent months learning to precision-cut asteroid rock now found themselves operating the most unusual weapons in known space. The mining lasers had been designed to slice through solid stone with surgical accuracy, but Marcus had realized their potential for something far more devastating. The key was not trying to use them as traditional weapons, but rather as tools for creating chaos in the enemy formation. Instead of targeting the ships directly, the laser crews began cutting into the surrounding asteroids, creating clouds of high-velocity debris that would make maneuvering treacherous for the attacking fleet. Debris field is expanding, reported Sensor Technician Williams. Multiple Dominion ships are altering course to avoid collision. Their formation is breaking apart? Perfect. Marcus had learned long ago that the best way to defeat a superior force was to deny them the ability to use their advantages effectively. The Dominion fleet's strength lay in their coordinated firepower, but that coordination required precise positioning and clear fields of fire. Mining crews. Begin Operation Sledgehammer, Marcus commanded. The largest mining laser, normally used for deep core extraction, had been repositioned and supercharged using power diverted from non-essential systems. Its targeting system locked onto the largest asteroid in the nearby field, a massive chunk of iron and nickel that had been scheduled for extraction the following month. The beam lanced out, invisible in the vacuum but devastating in its effect. The asteroid, weakened by months of preliminary drilling, split along predetermined stress lines that the miners knew better than the layout of their own homes. But this wasn't random destruction. Marcus had calculated the fracture patterns precisely. The resulting explosion sent house-sized chunks of rock hurtling through space at tremendous velocity, each piece following trajectories that Marcus had plotted to intersect with the Dominion fleet's most likely evasion routes. It was like firing a shotgun blast that covered half the solar system. Two of the smaller Dominion ships, caught off guard by the sudden appearance of high-speed debris, took devastating impacts. One ship's shields failed completely, the massive rock puncturing its hull and sending it spinning helplessly into the asteroid field. The second managed to maintain structural integrity, but was forced to withdraw from the battle line to assess damage. 2 enemy ships neutralized, reported Williams, his voice filled with amazement. The remaining 15 are regrouping at maximum weapons range. War Commander Thekalon's communication came through again, and this time there was genuine respect in his voice alongside the anger. Ingenious humans. You fight with the cunning of the ancient Kethmori warriors. But parlor tricks will only delay the inevitable. We are still 15 ships against 1 mining platform. Marcus had been counting on that attitude. The Dominion commander was still thinking in terms of ships versus platform, firepower versus firepower. He wasn't seeing the real battle that was taking place. "Dr. Mitchell report," Marcus called to the medical station. "All crews performing within normal parameters," she replied promptly. "The combat stims are keeping everyone sharp, and we've had surprisingly few injuries so far." That was crucial. Unlike the Dominion ships with their large crews and automated systems, every person on the mining station was essential to their defense. They couldn't afford to lose anyone to fatigue or injury. "Commander Rodriguez, what's our power status?" Marcus asked. "We're running at 120% of normal capacity," she replied. "Engineering says we can maintain this level for maybe another 2 hours before we start risking system failures." 2 hours. Marcus ran the calculations in his head, weighing their remaining options against the Dominion fleet's capabilities. The enemy ships were being more cautious now, staying at maximum range where their weapons had the advantage. They would probe the station's defenses methodically, looking for weaknesses to exploit. "Phase 3, Marcus announced. "All crew members not essential to current operations, prepare for boarding action." A murmur ran through the command center. Dr. Mitchell looked at him sharply. "Marcus, what are you planning?" "Something the Dominion won't expect," he replied, moving to the tactical display. "Mr. Patel, I need you to prepare the emergency atmospheric vent system for manual override." "Sir." "If we vent atmosphere, we'll create a propulsion effect. But it's not going to be enough to move the station significantly." "I'm not trying to move the station," Marcus said quietly. "I'm trying to move us." The plan was audacious even by human standards. The mining station had 4 emergency evacuation pods, each capable of carrying 12 people. But Marcus wasn't planning to use them for evacuation. Instead, he intended to turn them into the most unconventional attack craft in galactic history. Each pod would be loaded not with panicked civilians, but with volunteers armed with cutting torches, explosives, and an intimate knowledge of how to make industrial equipment do things it was never designed to do. They would use the station's atmospheric venting system to mask their launch signatures, riding the expelled gas and debris toward the Dominion fleet. "It's suicide," Dr. Mitchell stated flatly. "So was defending the station in the first place," Marcus replied. "But here we are, and 2 of their ships are already out of the fight. The odds of successfully boarding an enemy vessel in those pods are astronomical," Chief Engineer Patel added. "Good thing we're not trying to board them," Marcus said with a grin that would have worried anyone who knew his reputation. "We're trying to introduce them to some basic principles of human engineering." The truth was, Marcus had no intention of traditional boarding actions. The evacuation pods were too small and lightly armed for that kind of assault. But they were perfect for getting close enough to demonstrate why human miners were some of the most resourceful people in the galaxy. "Volunteer crews to the pods," Marcus announced station-wide. "This is not an order. Anyone who chooses to remain on the station will continue to fight from here. But if you're willing to take the biggest risk for the biggest potential payoff, meet me in Bay 4 in 15 minutes. To his amazement, nearly half the station's crew showed up. Engineers, technicians, miners, even Dr. Mitchell herself stood ready to climb into what everyone knew was likely a one-way trip. "I thought you said this was suicide," Marcus commented to the doctor as they prepared to board the first pod. "It is," she replied matter-of-factly, But if we're going to die today anyway, I'd rather do it on my terms than theirs. That, Marcus reflected, was perhaps the most human thing anyone had said all day. As the pods prepared for launch, Marcus took one last look at the tactical display. The Dominion fleet had settled into a standard bombardment formation, confident that they could systematically destroy the station's defenses from safe range. They were probably right. If this had been a conventional battle, but there was nothing conventional about what was about to happen. All pods. "This is Chun," Marcus transmitted as the atmospheric venting system engaged, creating a massive cloud of gas and debris around the station. "Remember, we're not trying to win a space battle. We're trying to solve an engineering problem. How do you stop 17 ships with 4 pods and a lot of industrial equipment?" "By showing them that humans don't just think outside the box," came the reply from Pod 3, piloted by a grizzled mining foreman named Peterson. "We redesigned the whole damn box." The pods launched into the expanding cloud of vented atmosphere, their small engines masked by the chaos of escaping gas and debris. To the Dominion sensors, they would appear to be nothing more than additional wreckage from the Stati. The 4 pods drifted through the expanding debris field like deadly seeds carried on a cosmic wind. Marcus monitored their progress through the pod's limited sensor array, watching as they approached the Dominion formation undetected. The alien ships maintained their bombardment positions, their attention focused on the mining station that continued to return fire with impossible accuracy. "Pod 2 to lead," came the voice of Engineer Kim through the communication system. "We're approaching the port flank of their lead dreadnought. These things are bigger than I imagined." Marcus could see what she meant. The Dominion dreadnought Crimson Talon stretched over 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull bristling with weapon ports and sensor arrays. It was a ship designed to project power across interstellar distances, a monument to military engineering that could reduce planets to ash. "Remember the plan?" Marcus transmitted to all pods. "We're not here to fight these ships. We're here to teach them about human problem-solving." Each pod carried a carefully selected payload that would have seemed absurd to any conventional military analyst. Instead of weapons designed for space combat, they carried mining equipment, industrial solvents, and electromagnetic pulse generators jury-rigged from the station's waste processing systems. Most importantly, each pod carried something that no alien military had ever encountered in battle: the collective knowledge of humans who had spent their lives making dangerous equipment work in impossible conditions. "Pod 4 is in position," reported Foreman Peterson. "I'm seeing what looks like their main sensor array. Ugly thing, isn't it?" "Remember, we need to create confusion, not destruction," Marcus reminded them. "Hit them fast, hit them hard, and get out before they know what happened." The pods split up, each targeting a different aspect of the Dominion fleet's operations. Marcus guided Pod 1 toward the communications array of the lead dreadnought, while the others moved toward their assigned targets: the fleet's tactical coordination ship, the primary sensor platform, and the command vessel's power distribution network. "Beginning approach on the Crimson Talon," Marcus announced. "All pods, execute on my mark." The Dominion ships loomed enormous in the darkness, their hulls scarred by countless battles across the galaxy. But Marcus had noticed something during his study of their formation that gave him hope. These ships were designed for fighting other ships of similar technology. They weren't prepared for the kind of asymmetric warfare that desperate humans could devise. Marcus transmitted. Pod 1 accelerated toward the dreadnought's communication array, a cluster of sophisticated transmission equipment that coordinated the entire fleet's operations. As they closed the final distance, Dr. Mitchell activated the pod's mining laser. But instead of trying to cut through the heavily armored hull, she targeted something much more vulnerable. The laser sliced through the delicate, crystalline structures of the alien communication system, components that had been designed for maximum efficiency rather than battlefield durability. Within seconds, the Crimson Talon's ability to coordinate with the rest of the fleet was reduced to static. But Marcus's real stroke of genius wasn't the attack itself. As the pod pulled away from the disabled array, it released a cloud of industrial-grade electromagnetic chaff, tiny particles designed for mining, operations that created a persistent interference field around the ship's remaining sensors. Pod, too successful, reported Engineer Kim. Their tactical coordination ship just went dark. And I think we may have accidentally triggered some kind of chain reaction in their computer systems. Accidentally? Dr. Mitchell asked with a raised eyebrow. Well, mostly accidentally, Kim replied. I may have introduced a small virus into their network when I interfaced with their systems to download their communication protocols. Marcus shook his head in amazement. Trust a human engineer to hack an alien computer system during a combat operation just because she was curious about how it worked. Pod 3 here, came Peterson's gravelly voice. Their sensor platform is experiencing what I like to call catastrophic recalibration syndrome. Also, their hull now has several large holes in it, courtesy of some mining charges that may have been accidentally left behind. Pod 4 reporting mission success, announced the final team. The command ship's power grid is now operating according to human electrical standards instead of Dominion ones. I figure they've got about 10 minutes before their entire energy distribution network overloads. As the pods regrouped in the shadow of a nearby asteroid, Marcus watched the Dominion fleet's perfect formation dissolve into chaos. Ships that had been operating in precise coordination now found themselves blind, deaf, and increasingly unable to communicate with each other. The massive weapons that had threatened to reduce the mining station to debris were now firing wildly into empty space, their targeting systems confused by the electromagnetic interference. War. Commander Thekalon's voice crackled over the communication system, distorted by static and clearly transmitted from a backup system. Humans! What have you done to our ships? Our systems are reporting impossible readings. Marcus keyed the response from Pod 1, allowing the satisfaction to show in his voice. We introduced them to human engineering, Commander. Specifically, the principle that any system can be improved if you're creative enough. This is treachery. You are civilians, not warriors. Actually, Commander, that's where you made your biggest mistake, Marcus replied as he guided the pod back toward the mining station. You assumed there was a difference. The truth was, the pod's success had exceeded even Marcus's optimistic projections. He had hoped to disrupt the Dominion fleet's operations long enough for the mining station to inflict serious damage with its improvised weapons. What he hadn't anticipated was how effectively human curiosity and mechanical aptitude would interact with alien technology designed by beings who thought in completely different patterns. All pods. Return to base, Marcus commanded. We've got a battle to finish. But as they approached the mining station, Marcus realized that the battle had already shifted in their favor. Commander Rodriguez's voice came through clearly on the communication system. Marcus, you're going to want to see this. The Dominion fleet is attempting to withdraw, but half their ships can't coordinate with the other half. They're running into each other out there. Through Pod 1's viewport, Marcus could see the truth of her statement. The once mighty Dominion fleet had become a collection of confused, partially disabled ships stumbling around the asteroid field like blind giants. 2 more vessels had collided while trying to execute evasive maneuvers, their hulls locked together as they spun helplessly through space. Pod teams, prepare for recovery, Marcus announced. I think we've made our point. But War Commander Thekalon apparently had other ideas. As the pods approached the station's docking bays, the Crimson Talon suddenly surged forward, its massive bulk accelerating directly toward the mining platform. The ship's communication array might be disabled, but its engines and weapons were still functional. Ramming attack, shouted Commander Rodriguez from the station. All hands, brace for impact. Marcus watched in horror as 2 kilometers of armored warship bore down on the fragile mining station. Even if they survived the impact, the explosion would likely destroy both vessels. Taking all hands with them. Pod teams. Emergency dispersal pattern, Marcus commanded, his mind racing through possibilities. There had to be something they could do, some way to stop or deflect a ship that Massive dot? Then Dr. Mitchell's voice cut through his thoughts with characteristic directness. Marcus, remember what you said about humans redesigning the box? What do you mean? I mean, we're not trying to stop that ship, she said, her fingers already working at the pod's modified control systems. We're trying to redirect it. Marcus suddenly understood what she was thinking, and the audacity of it took his breath away. Doctor, that's even crazier than what we just did. Good, she replied with a grin that would have been terrifying on anyone else. Crazy seems to be working for us today. The plan was simple in concept but staggering in execution. Instead of trying to intercept the dreadnought directly, they would use the mining station's most powerful asset. Its position in the asteroid field, Dr. Mitchell's modifications to pod. One's systems would allow them to interface with the station's gravity generators one more time, but not to deflect incoming weapons. This time, they were going to move an asteroid. Commander Rodriguez, we need maximum power to the gravity generators in 60 seconds, Marcus transmitted to the station. And everyone needs to hold on to something solid. Marcus, what are you planning? Something that's either going to save us all or kill us all, he replied. Possibly both. As the Crimson Talon closed the final distance to the mining station, Marcus and Dr. Mitchell worked frantically to align the gravity generators with the largest remaining asteroid in the field. The massive chunk of rock had been their primary extraction target, weakened by months of preliminary drilling and precisely mapped for structural vulnerabilities. Gravitational field at maximum intensity, reported Chief Engineer Patel from the station. Whatever you're doing, do it fast. That dreadnought will be in ramming range in 30 seconds. Initiating gravity well displacement, Marcus announced. All hands. 3 days after the battle, the mining station Kepler 442b had become the most famous outpost in human space. News of their impossible victory had spread across the frontier faster than any official military communication, carried by traders, explorers, and refugees who had witnessed the Dominion's first major defeat. Marcus stood in the observation deck, watching as the 7th rescue vessel in 12 hours docked with the station. Word of their battle had drawn support from across the outer rim, with ships arriving hourly to offer assistance, supplies, and most importantly, volunteers. Another cargo hauler requesting permission to dock, reported Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. They're carrying medical supplies and ... She paused, checking her readouts. Double quotes ... a team of xenotechnology specialists who want to study the Dominion equipment we captured. Grant permission, Commander Rodriguez replied. And ask them if they brought any coffee. We've been running on recycled stimulants for 3 days. The captured equipment was perhaps the most valuable result of their victory. When the Dominion fleet had retreated, they had abandoned several damaged ships, leaving behind technology that human scientists had only theorized about. Dr. Mitchell had been leading teams of engineers and researchers in carefully dismantling alien systems, reverse engineering weapons and defenses that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Marcus, Dr. Mitchell called from across the command center. You need to see this. She led him to a makeshift laboratory, where teams of specialists were working around the clock to understand Dominion technology. On the main display was a 3-dimensional representation of what appeared to be a star map, but unlike any that Marcus had seen before. This is from the tactical computer of the ship that tried to ram us, Dr. Mitchell explained. It's not just a map of their current operations. It's a complete strategic overview of their campaign against humanity. Marcus studied the display with growing alarm. Red markers indicated human settlements that had already been attacked, while yellow markers showed targets scheduled for future assault. But it was the sheer scope of the operation that took his breath away. They're planning to hit every human colony beyond the inner systems, he said quietly. This isn't just raiding. It's systematic extermination. Gets worse, Dr. Mitchell continued, manipulating the display to show additional data. According to their intelligence files, they've been monitoring human expansion for years, waiting for us to spread ourselves too thin to defend effectively. The attacks on frontier settlements weren't random acts of aggression. They were surgical strikes designed to isolate the outer colonies from Earth support. How many more fleets do they have? Commander Rodriguez asked, joining them at the display. At least 12 major battle groups, plus dozens of smaller raiding forces, Dr. Mitchell replied. But here's the interesting part. Their strategic planning is based on the assumption that humans fight like every other species they've conquered. Ship-to-ship battles using conventional tactics and superior firepower. Marcus felt a grim smile cross his face. But we don't fight like other species. Exactly. And now they know it. The question is, what are they going to do about it? The answer came sooner than anyone expected. Sensor Technician Williams looked up from his station with an expression of concern. Commander, I'm reading a massive fleet approaching our position. Definitely Dominion configuration, but the scale is unprecedented. The main display shifted to show the approaching force, and Marcus felt his stomach drop. 47 ships in perfect formation, including 8 of the massive dreadnoughts that served as the backbone of Dominion military power. It was more firepower than had been assembled in a single location since the start of their campaign against humanity. They're not taking any chances this time, Rodriguez observed grimly. Commander. Incoming transmission, reported Torres. It's coming from the lead ship, and they're requesting to speak with Marcus Chun specifically. Marcus moved to the communication station, his mind already working on the implications. The Dominion knew his name, which meant they had studied the battle records and identified him as the architect of their defeat. Put them through, he said. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the bridge of a Dominion warship. The figure at the center of the display was clearly the fleet commander, a tall, imposing alien with the distinctive cranial ridges and silver skin that marked him as one of the Kethmori warrior class. Marcus Chun, the alien said, his English precise despite the unfamiliar accent. I am Fleet Admiral Vorthak of the Dominion 3rd Expeditionary Force. Your reputation precedes you. Admiral, Marcus replied formally. I have to say, 47 ships seems like overkill for a single mining station. Perhaps. But then you have already proven that human tactical thinking is unconventional. I prefer to be thorough. Marcus could see respect in the alien's posture, the way he held himself during the conversation. It was the bearing of one warrior acknowledging another, even across the vast gulf between species. I assume you didn't bring nearly 50 ships just to chat, Marcus said. Indeed not. I come with an offer, Marcus Chun. Surrender yourself to our custody, and we will allow the evacuation of all civilian personnel from this facility. You have proven yourself an exceptional opponent. The Dominion has use for such individuals, and if I refuse? Admiral Vorthak's expression hardened. Then we will demonstrate that courage, no matter how remarkable, cannot overcome impossible odds indefinitely. 47 ships will reduce this station to atoms? There will be no survivors, no miraculous escapes, no clever improvisations. Only death. Marcus looked around the command center at the faces of the crew members who had chosen to stand and fight against 17 ships just 3 days ago. He saw exhaustion, fear, but also determination. These people had discovered something about themselves during that battle, something that couldn't be easily surrendered. Admiral, may I have a moment to consider your offer? Of course. You have 1 hour to make your decision. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in tense silence. Marcus turned to face the assembled crew, knowing that whatever he said next would determine not just their fate, but potentially the future of human expansion in the galaxy. Well, Dr. Mitchell said dryly, this is an interesting development. Interesting is one word for it, Rodriguez replied. Marcus, you know, we can't fight 47 ships. We used up most of our tricks in the last battle, and they'll be prepared for everything we tried before. Maybe, Marcus said thoughtfully. But there's something the Admiral said that bothers me. What's that? He said courage can't overcome impossible odds indefinitely. But here's the thing, we've been doing exactly that for the past 3 days. And not just here on this station. Marcus moved to the main tactical display. calling up reports that had been streaming in from across the frontier. "Look at this. 7 more Dominion attacks in the past 72 hours. All of them repelled by settlements that shouldn't have had a prayer against military assault fleets." The reports painted a picture that was almost impossible to believe. An agricultural colony on Kepler 186f had used modified crop-dusting aircraft to deliver electromagnetic pulse bombs to Dominion ships. A research station on Proxima Centauri b had created a minefield using repurposed scientific probes. Even a small trading post had managed to defeat a raiding force by turning their docking facilities into an elaborate trap. "They're learning from what we did here," Commander Rodriguez said with growing excitement. "Every human settlement in the Outer Rim is adapting our tactics." "More than that," Marcus replied. "They're improving on them. Look at this report from the Tau Ceti colony. They didn't just disable the attacking ships, they captured them intact and converted their crews to prisoners of war. Apparently, they used industrial-grade sleep gas pumped through the ventilation systems." Dr. Mitchell laughed, despite the tension. "Leave it to humans to figure out how to non-violently capture a warship. The point is," Marcus continued, "Admiral Vorthak thinks he's dealing with an isolated incident. He believes that overwhelming force applied to this station will end human resistance. But what we've started here isn't just about this battle. It's about proving that humans don't fight the way other species fight. So what are you proposing?" Rodriguez asked. Marcus looked out at the approaching Dominion fleet. 47 ships carrying enough firepower to sterilize a planet. Then he thought about the reports streaming in from across the frontier. Stories of ordinary humans doing impossible things when their survival depended on it. "I'm proposing we teach Admiral Vorthak the most important lesson about humanity," Marcus said, "which is that every time someone tells us something is impossible, we take it as a personal challenge." The plan that emerged over the next 30 minutes was so audacious that even Marcus questioned his own sanity. But as the crew threw themselves into preparations with the same desperate creativity that had won their first battle, he began to think it might actually work. The key was understanding what the Dominion expected. They had brought overwhelming force because they assumed that superior firepower would negate human tactical innovation. But they were still thinking in terms of ship-to-ship combat, still assuming that the battle would take place in space around the mining. Admiral Vorthak's expression shifted from confusion to alarm as the implications of Marcus's words became clear. "What are you talking about, human?" "Simple," Marcus replied, his voice carrying across the command center where every crew member was now at their assigned position. "You see, Admiral, when you destroyed those frontier settlements, you made one crucial mistake. You left survivors. And those survivors have been coming here for the past 3 days, learning everything we discovered about fighting your ships." The truth was even more audacious than the Admiral could imagine. The mining station had indeed become an impromptu training facility, with refugee crews from destroyed settlements working alongside Marcus's people to develop new tactics and techniques. Every ship that had arrived to offer support had also brought crews eager to learn how a mining station had defeated a Dominion fleet. "Dr. Mitchell, activate the demonstration," Marcus commanded. Throughout the asteroid field, beacons that had been disguised as debris suddenly activated, their signals connecting to form a massive communication network. Simultaneously, what the Dominion fleet had assumed were abandoned ships drifting in the field powered up their engines and weapons systems. "Admiral," Marcus continued, "meet the first human irregular fleet, 26 ships that you dismissed as space junk, crewed by refugees who've spent 3 days learning how to fight like humans instead of like traditional space forces." The ships that emerged from the asteroid field were a motley collection of freighters, mining vessels, research ships, and colonial transports. By any conventional military standard, they were completely outmatched by the Dominion fleet. But Marcus had learned something important during the first battle. Conventional military standards didn't apply when humans got creative. "This is impossible," Admiral Vorthak said, his voice betraying the first hint of uncertainty. "These vessels have no military capability. They're civilian craft." "You're right," Marcus agreed. "They are civilian craft. which is why you have no idea what they're capable of. The demonstration began with the lead freighter, a massive cargo hauler that had been running supplies to frontier colonies. Its cargo bays opened, releasing what appeared to be hundreds of small objects into space. To the Dominion sensors, they looked like standard cargo containers ejected during a crisis. They weren't cargo containers. Modified mining drones? Dr. Mitchell announced cheerfully. We've spent the last 3 days teaching refugees how to turn industrial equipment into weapons. Each drone carries enough explosive to disable a ship's engines, and they're programmed to target specific system vulnerabilities that we identified from the Dominion ships we captured. The swarm of drones accelerated toward the Dominion fleet, their small size and erratic movement patterns making them nearly impossible to target effectively. The alien ships opened fire, their precise military weapons struggling to engage targets that moved like insects rather than spacecraft. Second demonstration, Marcus announced. The research vessel Galileo. The sleek science ship that had been studying exotic matter in the outer system suddenly appeared on the Dominion fleet's flank, having used experimental faster-than-light communication to coordinate its jump with pinpoint accuracy. But instead of weapons, it deployed something that made Admiral Vorthak's tactical display light up with impossible readings. Localized space-time distortion field, explained Chief Engineer Patel over the communication system. We figured out how to weaponize their own gravity manipulation experiments. Any ship caught in that field is going to experience some very interesting relativistic effects. 3 Dominion vessels suddenly found themselves moving at different rates of time relative to the rest of the fleet. Their weapons fired in slow motion, their communications were scrambled by temporal displacement, and their formation cohesion collapsed as ships that had been perfectly synchronized became hopelessly out of phase with each other. Third demonstration, Marcus continued relentlessly. Colonial Transport Aurora. The passenger ship had been modified in ways that defied every principle of spacecraft design. Its passenger compartments had been converted into launching bays for what could only be described as weaponized maintenance equipment. Robotic repair units, originally designed to fix hull breaches in space, now swarmed toward Dominion ships with cutting torches and molecular adhesives. The idea, Dr. Mitchell explained as they watched the repair bots attach themselves to enemy hulls, is that instead of trying to destroy their ships, we're going to fix them. Specifically, we're going to fix them so they work according to human engineering standards instead of Dominion ones. Admiral Vorthak watched in horror as his ships' systems began failing in cascade patterns as the repair bots cheerfully upgraded alien technology to human specifications. Weapon systems shut down as power couplings were improved to handle different voltage requirements. Navigation computers crashed as their programming was optimized with human logic algorithms. Stop this, the Admiral demanded. These are not tactics. This is human, Marcus suggested helpfully. Yeah, we get that a lot. But the real demonstration was yet to come. As the Dominion fleet struggled to cope with swarms of drones, temporal distortion fields, and helpful repair robots, the mining station itself began to move. You see, Admiral, Marcus explained as the massive facility slowly rotated to present a different face to the Dominion fleet. We realized that the most effective weapon we had wasn't any piece of equipment. It was the knowledge of how to make any piece of equipment do something it was never designed to do. The station's mining equipment, industrial systems, and life support infrastructure had all been converted into components of the largest improvised weapon in galactic history. The gravity generators that had been used to move asteroids now created a massive gravitational lens that focused the system's star into a beam of concentrated solar energy. The atmospheric processing systems generated clouds of metallic particles that disrupted sensors and communications across the entire Dominion fleet. Most devastating of all, the station's main computer had spent 3 days analyzing Dominion technology and developing viruses specifically designed to infiltrate alien systems. Every communication attempt, every sensor scan, Every attempt to coordinate the fleet's response was now introducing malicious code into the enemy network. Admiral Vorthak, Marcus said as the Dominion fleet found itself blind, confused and increasingly helpless, I'd like to make you an offer. What do you want? I want you to carry a message back to your superiors. Tell them that this is what happens when humans have time to prepare. Tell them that every settlement you attack, every outpost you destroy, only teaches us new ways to fight. And most importantly, tell them that we're not going anywhere. The Admiral's image flickered as his ship's communication systems struggled with the ongoing cyber warfare. This cannot be the end of it. The Dominion will not tolerate human expansion into our territory. With respect, Admiral, Marcus replied. I don't think you understand the situation. This isn't your territory anymore. It's ours. We're not expanding into Dominion space. You're trespassing in human space, and we're asking you politely to leave. And if we refuse? Marcus gestured toward the chaos of the Dominion fleet, ships spinning helplessly as their systems failed in creative and unprecedented ways. Then we'll keep teaching you new lessons about human ingenuity. And Admiral? We're very good teachers. The withdrawal of the Dominion fleet took 6 hours, as ships struggled to coordinate their retreat with failing communication systems and compromised navigation computers. As the last alien vessel disappeared into faster-than-light travel, Marcus found himself standing once again in the observation deck, looking out at the asteroid field that had become the site of humanity's first major victory against the Dominion. So what happens now? Dr. Mitchell asked, joining him at the viewport. Now we get back to work, Marcus replied. But not mining asteroids? What then? Marcus gestured toward the collection of ships that had formed the irregular fleet, vessels, from dozens of different colonies and settlements that had come together to learn new ways of fighting. We start building something the galaxy has never seen before. Not a traditional military force, but a network of ordinary humans who know how to do extraordinary things when they have to. Commander Rodriguez approached them with a communication pad in her hand. Marcus, you need to see this. We're getting requests for training and tactical consultation from over 200 human settlements. Apparently, word of today's demonstration has spread faster than the Dominion retreat. And that's not all, Doctor, Mitchell added with a grin. 3 separate alien species have sent diplomatic inquiries asking if we'd be willing to share our defensive techniques. Seems the Dominion has been bullying more than just humanity. Marcus considered this information, thinking about the implications of what they had started. The battle for the mining station had been about survival. But what came next would be about something much more important, proving that no species had the right to determine another's place in the galaxy. Send responses to all requests, he said finally, and tell them we're not just sharing defensive techniques. We're teaching a completely new way of thinking about interstellar conflict, which is